This is the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show. Your war room for insider news and draft analysis from deep within the confines of Cowboys headquarters at the Star in Frisco.
Today is Thursday, January 25th, and we are 91 days away from the NFL Draft in Detroit, Michigan, as we welcome you into the Draft Show presented by Miller Lite, live from the SWBC studios here at the Star in Frisco. We have Nick Harris, Brian Broaddus, Zach Wolchuk, and filling in today, we have a very, very special guest from The Athletic. The one, the only, Dane Brugler joins us prior to Shrine Bowl in town. What's up, Dane?
Hey, how are you guys? This feels right, you know? It feels so good to be back. Frisco and the Cowboys, they hold such a close place to my heart. After I graduated college, came down here, lived here for 10 years. Any chance I have to come back, I'm here. And so when the Shrine Bowl announced they were moving to Frisco, fist pump. I get to go to Frisco now on my scouting tour through the draft process. So this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited you guys welcome me back.
You've got a little twinkle in your eye. I don't know if it's the new studio lights or what it actually ends up being, but it does. It's a little bit different than the last time you made it in here. And we've always said, as I knocked your laptop over, we've always said that the invitation's open, and we mean it. Anytime Dane's in town, we're going to make it happen. And this is the beginning of a very busy couple of months for you, right?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, for all of us, really. The All-Star season we're in the midst of it. You know, we've had the Hula Bowl, we've had College Gridiron Showcase with down the road in Fort Worth. Starting this weekend is the Shrine Bowl. One of the oldest All-Star game, and it was in. I mean, how many places? It was in Tampa for a while.
Yeah.
Then went to Vegas.
I remember when it was in Palo Alto forever,
Exactly.
out in California. That's one of my first experience of going in 1992. But you're absolutely right.
Storied
historical, yeah, absolutely,
have played in this game.
Yeah.
Even recently. I mean, Brock Purdy played in this game.
Yeah.
You look at some of the quarterbacks that were starting in the NFL this year as rookies. Aiden O'Connell with the Raiders, or Dorian Thompson-Robinson with the Browns. Mm-hmm. He was in this game. So there will be plenty of talent here this week for us to get our eyes on and figure them out before we get through the combine, pro days, workouts. So it's a good first step.
Well, we're certainly glad you're here and getting a chance to catch up with you in studio. Brian, I mean, he's one of the OGs.
He's one of the founders. When Ed Cahill had the idea about it, Derek Eagleton, we all talked about it, and then Dane was really getting started in his journey involved, and he just came off as this this guy works hard at it. He's got an opinion. It was perfect for what we were trying to do to launch the draft show. And I'll always be indebted to Dane for all the years of service. We were laughing earlier in just our little pre-show talk about how he used to sell the beast. Now it's one of these things that NFL executives have on their desk.
The draft Bible.
It's the draft Bible, and I just remember the what Dane went through to get that out, and we were promoting it on our some of the early draft shows, and then it became like you couldn't have a draft without it.
Yep.
And I just was so proud of what he's done. Where this journey has taken him, and the respect around the league and around the world for his ability to evaluate these players, and it's a sense of pride that I know DallasCowboys.com had a big part of his career going forward.
No doubt, and we always cheer for Dane. He's also, I joked about this, but I'm completely serious about it. The only reason I have a subscription to The Athletic is to make sure that I've got access to the beast whenever it comes to draft time. And I do a show Monday through Friday with John Machota of The Athletic. And Dane's the reason why I have The Athletic subscription. But
Shout out to John.
We
still
love
you,
John.
John.
We love John.
Still our guy.
I read your articles too, don't worry. But really is good to have you. But let's not just sit here and patty cake around. We got to talk some draft. Now, I want to talk about we're going to preview the Senior Bowl coming up in the next segment, and then the Shrine Bowl in the third segment. But just to get us started, your thoughts on where the depth of this draft is, because that's really where Cowboys fans are looking right now. They're looking for these different positions of need. They're looking for best player available. but we got to look at it from a broad stroke standpoint early on. Where do you look if you're trying to find some depth?
Yeah, I think in most years, I'm more excited about day 2 than I am in the first round. But this year, it's kind of the opposite. I love the first round this year. I think this could be like, what was it, 2011 NFL draft, when we literally half the picks in the 2011 NFL draft were Pro Bowlers.
Yeah.
I think we could have a first round like that this year. There are a ton of blue chippers, high-end talent. So I'm really excited for the first round. I'm also excited for the depth because I do think we have that as well. We're not sacrificing one for the other. Like everything, it's one. You have to look at position by position. Some positions are more or deeper than others. I'm convinced wide receiver is going to be deep the rest of our lives.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
every single year.
Yeah.
Everybody, the top tier athletes in high school and coming up, they want the ball in their hands, right? And we see that 7-on-7. We see that in college, and so I'm convinced wide receiver depth is going to be strong, forever. After that, this is a quarterback heavy draft. We know that. Offensive line, I think, is really strong.
Yes.
This is an offensive tackle first round.
Yeah.
And this is what we expected. Going back to my top 50 that I did in August before the season started, offensive tackle was the most well-represented position in that top 50. I think there were 8 or 9 in that initial top 50. That's kind of how it's played out with the amount of tackles that we could see going in the first round. So I do think there's a drop-off at the position, but if you're looking for a tackle, if you're looking for offensive line, somewhere in the top 50, 60 picks, there's going to be a guy for you.
Dane, when we're all going to stack our boards at the end of this, and we're going to come up with, we always get the questions asked to us, how many first-round grades do you have? I know we've got all-star games. I know we've got combine. I know we got medicals that we've got to deal with too, because there's some guys that have some medical questions. But in your mind, you have, as you've done some of your early studies, and I say early, you've been doing this since May, but do you have a number where you think your first-round cutoff is going to be? Is it a 22, a 23? Is it a 19? Do you have an idea of where that number is on your cutoff?
It's probably going to be around 25 for me.
Okay.
I think
so this thing's going to go pretty deep.
It's really heavy.
Yeah, there you go.
Like I said, I think this is a first round where some years you don't really want a top 10 pick because
right.
You're not getting a blue chipper necessarily. This year I think you are. Plus I think it's going to stretch into where the Cowboys, around that range of Cowboys will be picking. So it'll be interesting as we go through the process if that changes at all. Some of these guys do have medical histories that we need to figure out.
Yeah.
Leatu, UCLA, that's a big one. All these guys have something that it could change how we feel about them throughout the process. But like I said, I think this is going to be a stacked first round, and that's good news for the Cowboys with where they're going to be picking.
In your 2-round mock draft that you did just here recently, you gave them Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma, the offensive tackle. I think the premise that you had of the offensive tackle with the Tyron Smith is something we talk about on our various shows, and I know Zach and I talk about on the radio all the time. Was Guyton the guy all the way there for you, or did you have another tackle that you were kind of thinking? Because I feel like that we're all kind of, we all got our tackles that we like.
Yeah.
But is there something with is it just that Guyton sits that much, just a little bit higher on your board than maybe some of the other tackles that you were looking at, or was that Guyton just all the way? That was going to be your guy.
I think the draft process is going to help us figure out what how the stack's gonna look, because these guys are all, I think, pretty close together, and there's no consensus. I think for me, Joe Alt, Notre Dame's a top tackle. Olu Fashanu, Penn State's number 2, and then I think you have a lot of guys in that same next tier. And so breaking them up between Amarius Mims is one of the freakiest dudes I've ever watched play offensive tackle before. But he has 8 starts. And how do you? Teams are going to be referencing his first ever start against Ohio State last year in the playoff semifinals as, look what he did in this game. And when you're referencing that game, which is going to be, it was over a year ago, like that kind of tells you how little football he's played. But the length that he plays with, the movement skills, it's unreal. So, but Guyton, kind of along those same lines. He's a freaky guy.
Yes.
He's not the most polished, but you see him move out there, and you get excited. And he was a right tackle at Oklahoma. He doesn't have perfect tape by any means. He's not the most polished player, but that's why you might be able to get him. Where you get him. This is an offensive tackle class that I think there's going to be a lot of guys ranked pretty closely, and every team, depending on what scheme you run, if you're looking for more of a run blocker, more of a pass protector, you're going to rank them maybe a little bit differently.
I thought your reasoning was excellent, though, why you put the player there.
Well,
sometimes you look at it, you go, he's just
Doesn't make sense.
Sometimes you get mock drafters that are forcing players in positions because they have to get him off their, they have to get him off the list. I go, I don't want to miss not having this guy on, and you feel like you put him too deep in the draft.
Well, I thought it was the same thing with Jonathan Brooks in the second round.
Yeah.
And we've talked a lot about the running back class, and last year it was deep. And I was very surprised that the Cowboys waited until the 6th round to take Deuce Vaughn. This year with Jonathan Brooks, I think the only hesitation is the injury, right, with the ACL. Otherwise, he's probably the top back in this class. But I wonder how you look at the depth. If the Cowboys waited, and they probably would need to pick up some extra picks, maybe the comp picks help with that. Mm-hmm. But guys like Jalen Wright from Tennessee, I think, has really kind of caught my eye. Ray Davis is a fantastic story out of Kentucky. Schrader is a player that we've talked about from Mizzou, also a fantastic story. D2 to first team All SEC. Yeah. I mean, and a tough runner, but that's definitely a position area where I think the Cowboys are going to have to be looking at because we don't know about the future of that position.
There might not be a running back drafted top 50 this year.
Wow.
And that'd be only the second time ever in the history of the league that we didn't have a running back drafted that high. So, but once, where the Cowboys are picking in the second round, third round, fourth round, I think that's pretty good area for where these running backs should come off the board. And this is another position where there's no consensus running back one.
Yeah.
Brooks still has a shot to be that first running back drafted. We'll see how the ACL rehab goes. The combine will obviously be big for him in terms of the medicals. He'll be here actually at the Shrine Bowl,
right?
Not working out or anything,
doing interviews and stuff
talking,
like that.
Same thing with Jatavian Sanders, the tight end from Texas. Mm-hmm. He'll be here. Jordan Travis, the Florida State quarterback, same thing. But is it Audric Estime? Is it from Notre Dame? Braylon Allen from Wisconsin? All these guys offer something a little bit different. Bucky Irving from Oregon's a different type of back. Jalen Wright, who you mentioned, he might be one of the fastest players in this entire draft.
Explosive.
Yeah, I mean, he was a 100-meter state champion back in high school in North Carolina. So he reminds me a lot of Jerome Ford with the Browns, who he's got contact balance, he's got speed. Some other things, some of the pacing, the tempo, you have to worry about a little bit. They're still developing, but he's also one of the youngest players in this draft. Yeah. So you think about the upside with him, and he's going to be right there in that mix, that third, fourth round.
Is it going to be a run? Is it going to be a run, do you feel like, in that? I mean, is it going to be, sometimes we see the run with those corners where all of a sudden it's like, Dane looks up and goes, okay, here we go, and it's bam, 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 bam. They start
tight ends last year.
Yeah, they start hitting all these guys, and we're going into it thinking there's going to be a run. If there's not one in the top 50, could there be that run that you have to know when it's going to start and be in the middle of it if you want one of these guys?
And that might have happened to the Cowboys last year with the run we saw in the third. Tajay Spears comes off the board. Kendre Miller comes off the board.
Charbonnet,
right?
In that.
This draft is similar to last year, except there's no Gibbs or Bijan at the top.
Right.
But in terms of that third round range, we're going to see a lot of these guys come off the board, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see Blake Corum from Michigan, who I don't think is going to run great. He's had a lot of carries on him. He's still a good player, and when you're talking about late third round, that's good value for a player like that. Trey Benson, Florida State. Will Shipley from Clemson is a certain type of back with what he offers. So these running backs are going to be viewed very differently, scheme to scheme. But I think that third, fourth round range, we're going to see a lot of these guys fly off the board.
I've got Corum going to the Chargers already, so don't worry about it.
That'll be interesting. Yeah.
That would make some sense.
That would be fun. I'm with you as far as day two. These backs looking really good. I think there's a couple of those day two backs that could really pop as far as getting onto an NFL team, getting on the field as a rookie, and being able to contribute. There's even some day three guys that I really like too. You look at Jawar Jordan out of Louisville, and he's like that downhill guy that you can trust on a third down. You could trust to get those short yardage type opportunities. He reminds me of a Zach Moss out of the Colts. He's got that kind of downhill ability. I think he was initially planned to be a Senior Bowl guy, but he's not anymore. Carson Steele out of UCLA is kind of another guy that I think is a little interesting. But one guy that I'm really excited to see at the Shrine Bowl this week, and we'll talk about it more in the Shrine Bowl segment, is Isaiah Davis out of South Dakota State. Yeah. Okay. There's a ton of production out of there, back-to-back years with over 1,200 yards. He's big, stocky, 6'1", 220, has this like Melvin Gordon kind of build. But I'm curious to see what he can do against, obviously, P5 competition, these P5 guys. How does that kind of translate into the draft process? This is a big week for him, but I'm really excited to see kind of his long strides and how he's able to compare that with that.
Isn't it funny how we started with broad strokes of the NFL draft, and we've all started kind of going right back into offensive line and running back, trying to fix the run game and trying to gain 3 yards on 3rd and 2 to try and move the chains. It's kind of, that's where the focus has been. And you brought up the tackle and having Oklahoma tackle taken in that mock draft with Tyler Guyton in the early parts of your mocks. You weren't the only one to put an offensive tackle to Dallas. The draft mock drafts from Daniel Jeremiah and Mel Kiper both going with Jordan Morgan at the offensive tackle spot out of Arizona.
And I think you had him at 25, didn't you?
You had him pretty close there.
Right, exactly.
Is this kind of where we're headed? Is it offensive line heavy? Is that just because of where the draft is, or is that because of where the Cowboys are specifically?
Well, it's the strength of the first round, and we might see that run on these guys starting the teens. You know, it's if you don't have an offensive tackle and you need one, you better get them early, because I don't think this is a position. You look at the second round tackles and it's kind of slim pickings, you know, and not a lot of guys you get really excited about. So if you need that tackle, you really want to come away from this draft with an offensive tackle, you better take him in the first round. So we'll see when that run starts. Jordan Morgan's a good player. I think, you know, he's a guard on some teams' boards, which is interesting because, you know, he only played left tackle at Arizona.
Right.
But, you know, some of the range stuff, not perfect. We saw that against Braylon Trice, the Washington defensive end, in that matchup one-on-one. But he's a good player. And if he would have came out last year, he would have been somewhere in the top 60, 75 picks. But yeah, he's in that first round mix. Fuaga from Oregon State, probably the best run blocking offensive tackle in this class. He's also a guy that's a guard for some teams. So we'll have to see how the Cowboys feel about these guys.
A question I have for you is as far as where you're looking for a seamless transition from Tyron Smith to whoever would be his what's the word?
Heir apparent.
There you go, heir apparent at
Heir
left
to the
tackle.
throne.
If you're looking for a guy that has that length, has that kind of mobility, and being able to move from left tackle, is Tyler Guyton that best fit for you? I mean, you look at the length that he has and being able to kind of have that punch power as well. It kind of reminds you of a young Tyron in some ways.
There's no doubt. And, you know, on my podcast on the Athletic Prospects to Pros, we had Jim Nagy on yesterday. And I asked him straight up, if I went into a time machine and went to April and then came back and I told you, hey, Tyler Guyton was the first player drafted from the Senior Bowl this year, what would your response be? And he said, I think you got it right. I think you got it exactly right.
Wow. So
that's the type of talent this guy is. Just, again, it's the movement skills. He just moves differently than most guys that are 6'6", 320. You just don't see it very often, and that's a lot of what we were saying about Tyron Smith, when he was coming out. So, again, not a polished player per se. He didn't play left tackle at Oklahoma, so there's a projection there as well. But when you look at the traits, those are the traits you want to bet on at that position.
Where do you fall on these centers?
Yeah.
As you look at these centers, because I know Cowboy fans right now are watching this, and if you're a fan of another team, welcome. We talk about all your players, so you'll learn. But as far as Cowboy fans, we were thinking about what's going on with Tyler Biadasz here, and maybe how you can improve the running game. Where do you fall on these centers right now?
Well, I might have gone with a center to Dallas in my first round mock if Jackson Powers Johnson was still on the board.
You took him to Miami at 22.
right before.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that was one of my favorite.
And I threw
fits.
a pen when you did it.
That was one of my favorite fits in that entire mock.
You see me
that I
throw
did.
a pen, that's why.
Look, he's a really good player, and he's a young player. He just turned 21 years old, literally like this past week. But when you watch his film from this year, show me the bad tape.
Yeah.
I'm still looking. Can't find it anywhere. He was a multi-athlete growing up. He was a big-time baseball player, basketball, did everything. And then at some point during high school, it was like, all right, I'm pretty good at this football thing. Goes to Oregon, played guard as a sophomore, and then this past year as a junior was outstanding at center, won the Remington. You look at the size, you look at the movement skills, you look at the strength that he plays with, the technique. Some of the technique stuff's still developing, but he's really far along for a guy that's a first-year starter. So first round, I think, is not too early for him. And then even Graham Barton from Duke, who we expect to make that move inside to center, played there as a freshman, has that experience. Unfortunately, he won't be at the Senior Bowl. He had labrum surgery.
Yeah, the injuries.
Right after Thanksgiving around there. Had an MCL that he was working through parts of the year. But he's a really quality player that could end up in the first round. And I think a lot of teams will have him as a center on their draft board by the time we get to draft weekend. But this is a pretty good center group. Zach Frazier from West Virginia is a future NFL starter. He's probably somewhere in that second round. Cedric Van Pran is okay. I'm not the biggest fan of his. I think he's probably more of a fourth round guy in my opinion. But even around that same range, Bo Limmer from from Arkansas.
Sure.
He's a guy that I think he deserves more love. He's in that kind of similar tier as Cedric Van Pran. So this
Is it a tough group overall, though? Because to me, that's where I think, when you're looking at the Cowboys, they got tough players, but look what's going on in Detroit right now with their center and Ragnow and how they play, and if you have that tough guy in the middle, I think these guys do have all those traits that you when you start to talk about toughness.
Barton. I mean, you watch Barton.
Your knee hit the
strike one.
There's strike one for Zach Wolchuk in the draft process. We will keep track. Almost.
You there?
Almost. Was that
You
it?
got to hit the button there. You turned it off. Somebody else make a point.
You know what?
You don't do radio for a living.
We
so
can
it's
go.
okay.
We can go straight into the
I think
break.
we're good.
Oh, you're
We figured
it
it out. We're all right. But yeah, no, Barton was one of the nastiest linemen when I was watching, because that's what you're looking for: the physicality, the grit, the toughness.
Oh, yeah.
Barton stands out in that way. I think he might be one of those guys, and the medical stuff with him.
Right.
Is that a concern?
It's something that you hope as a scout you don't pay attention to that stuff as much. You just write down here are the injuries, and then you cross your fingers when you get the medical report back from after the combine. Just one day you walk into the war room and his name's taken off the no, and you're just just dropped.
He's exactly right. You're at the mercy of these doctors sometimes. You just scout the player and hope for the best. You really do.
But you're absolutely right. He's so stubborn with his hands, the tenacity that he plays with. That's what everybody wants for an identity on their offensive line. So, I mean, you want a tough guy. Zach Frazier, what it was against Baylor when he broke his leg late in the season, and he's literally crawling off the field, fourth quarter, final few minutes, so his team doesn't get a penalty because they were out of timeouts and he was injured. I mean, dude has a broken leg. So, toughness is not a worry when you talk about the top 3 or 4 centers in this class.
So we've got plenty more to come throughout the episode with Dane Brugler, but when we come back, we're going to have Nick Harris and Dane Brugler debate why they like and don't like Cedric Van Pran and the Senior Bowl. Because you brought up Cedric Van Pran specifically, but we are going to preview Senior Bowl products, and then we'll have these two fight it out when we come back here on the Draft Show.
I'm Dak Prescott, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys.
And they snap it to Prescott, who looks right. It's not there. He escapes left. He'll run for a first down.
Just like football, when it comes to crypto, it's important to have a team you can trust. With blockchain.com, I know I'm in good hands. Since 2011, they've been trusted by millions around the world to buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrency.
Prescott's going to run this himself. Run it up the middle, and he scores.
Whether you're new to crypto or an active trader, they've got you covered. What are you waiting for? Get started at blockchain.com.
I'm Darren Woodson, former Dallas Cowboy player and Super Bowl champion. When I played in the NFL at a high level, I relied on my vision to see the field. As I started getting older, I noticed my vision wasn't as good, and I was getting frustrated from wearing my glasses all day. I went to Laser Care Eye Center, and Dr. G talked about all the options. Thanks to technology and Laser Care Eye Center, I can see near, far, and between. Don't fumble your vision any longer. Visit them at dfweyes.com and tell them Darren sent you. They got me back on my game.
In a stressful world, Lincoln provides balance and calm amidst the chaos by creating sanctuaries that move you through the world with ease. Our vehicles make your time richer and more uplifting with human-centric design, intelligent technology, and powerful performance. As the official luxury vehicle of the Dallas Cowboys, driving a Lincoln is just another way to show your team pride. Experience our full lineup of luxury vehicles, including the Corsair, Aviator, Navigator, and Nautilus at Lincoln.com.
Hi, I'm Danny McCray, Dallas Cowboys alumni player here with Smoothie King. And Smoothie King wants to ask you, what's that sound? That's the sound of us magically transforming our smoothie bowls into 2 new decadent flavors. Dig into a cool acai or pitaya bowl, handcrafted with crunchy, purely Elizabeth granola, fresh strawberries, and finished with a velvety chocolate hazelnut drizzle. Perfect for breakfast, lunch, or anytime you want to munch. And that's the sound of you making them disappear. Smoothie bowls, now in 2 new decadent flavors. Only at Smoothie King, the official smoothie of the Dallas Cowboys.
This is the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show.
Welcome back into the Draft Show presented by Miller Lite. Taste you can depend on. This segment is brought to you by your Texas Ford dealers. Ford is the best in Texas. All right, we've got a Senior Bowl preview, a Shrine Bowl preview coming up in our next segment. Dane Brugler is in the building today from The Athletic. Nick Harris, Brian Broaddus, Zach Wolchuk, I'm Kyle Yeomans. All right, let's take a look at the Senior Bowl. You mentioned Jim Nagy and what he's done. I mean, the roster continues to get better and better and better as you go on. And I mean, where do you feel like the strength of this Senior Bowl roster is just based off of initial viewing, top to bottom?
You could certainly make the argument at tackle, like we've been talking about, because Tyler Guyton's on the roster. Fuaga, our BYU left tackle. I'm still working on saying his name.
Sua Mataya.
There you go.
Sua Mataya, baby.
Kuda Matata.
What a wonderful phrase.
There you go. That's exactly what it's going to be the rest of the way.
Thanks. Now I'm going to say that every time. Instead of
maybe it'll help you, you know?
Yeah, all right.
If you say it on the NFL Network, you have to quote Brian Broaddus.
Come on, man. 10 years of working with us here. You know that it gets a little off the rails.
Tackle, that's definitely going to be one. I mean, quarterbacks always drive the conversation, right?
Yeah.
Bo Nix and Michael Penix will both be there.
Yeah.
That'll be a fun matchup. Bo Nix certainly has a chance to go.
Are they on the same team?
Yes, which is great because you want to see them back-to-back.
Back-to-back practice.
Same throws.
Nagy knows what he's doing.
With the same
same
receivers, right?
Yeah.
So, I think it'll be. It was funny when I was doing my mock. Because a mock is never what my rankings, right? I send
make your last one the best one,
right? But I send it around to my contacts in the league, and hey, is this about the range you think he's going to go? What do you think about this and this? And when it came to Bo Nix, the wide range of where he might go was crazy. It was like some thought third round, some thought I think he's going top 25. So there is a wide range of opinions on Bo Nix, and the Senior Bowl week will be really important, I think, for him. And it's kind of strange to say about a 5-year starter in college football, a guy that has a ton of tape. But just to see him throw live, and especially going head-to-head with Michael Penix, it'll be important for him in a strong week.
Can I throw a name out who he reminds me of?
Yeah, who you got?
Hendon Hooker.
Okay.
Interesting.
Oh.
The way he kind of can move around and the way he can launch that thing, it just kind of was – I just had that Hendon Hooker vibe to him with his ability to throw the way he throws the football. That he's got the kind of the measurables and the mobility and the with the arm talent and stuff like that. I was just thinking. I mean, sometimes like you hold the ball a little long there, but man, this kid makes a lot of plays. It's amazing at Auburn. He was awful.
Yeah.
He was a terrible football player at Auburn. I appreciated him when LSU played Auburn and he was quarterback because I knew some bad things were going to happen, and then for them, but he goes to Oregon. They worked with him. The mechanics and all that, the way he plays. I mean, you could see him working defenses and stuff, with his eyes and how he can move people around and stuff. He has become so much of a better thrower of the football than he was at Oregon.
There's something to be said about reinventing yourself as a quarterback. All he knew growing up was SEC football. I mean, he was an
his
Auburn
dad. His dad was a fine player at Auburn as well.
So to go through that adversity and then reinvent yourself at a new place, you give him a lot of credit for that. The one thing that kind of bothered me about him was that offense. I thought because you're right. There were some examples where he would use his eyes and stuff, but I think the offense it made things so simple for him in terms of where to go with the football.
Yeah.
He had one of the quickest times to throw in all of college football.
Yeah.
Average depth of target that he was throwing to was under 7 yards. I mean, it just boom, 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 get the ball out. And
to that point, really quick, his receivers had more yak than anybody in the country.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And that boom, 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 and then try to get him over the top with Troy Franklin. That was the offense. And hey, it worked out for him, except against Washington. But it worked out for him nonetheless. I mean, he had more touchdowns this year than anybody else. He had 51 total touchdowns. And he has some mobility to him. That's a part of his game as well. So he's a really interesting player. It's funny, the Hendon Hooker comp I was kind of making with Michael Penix. Because you have the medicals there. That's a factor. Just coming from those offenses where you have some pretty good receivers you're throwing to.
Interesting arm angles.
Right. Older players. With Penix, just to see him throw, I have a third-round grade on him, and it's funny how draft narratives work, how good he was against Texas.
Yeah.
So good.
And, just think about if they lost. Say Quinn Ewers connects on that throw to Mitchell, and Texas wins that game. Season over for Michael Penix, but he ends on that note.
Yeah.
Think about how differently people would think of him based off of then how he played against Michigan, which is the best defense he's ever faced in his life, the closest thing to an NFL defense he's ever faced. It's just funny how draft narratives work because it would be the conversation around Michael Penix would be so different if they lost that game against Texas.
I know this. Indiana football has not been the same since he left.
No.
Indiana
You could say
had
the same thing about Kalen DeBoer too.
Yeah,
as their
exactly.
coordinator,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Same
I mean,
thing, yeah.
that's the thing about it is I think there's an it factor about Michael Penix.
There is.
I do.
Yeah,
I think there is something about him, the number of starts he's made, the big games. Yeah, the Michigan game. Give Michigan a lot of credit. Mentor did a great job, the defensive coordinator at Michigan, making him have some different looks in that football game.
But you're going to see that every Sunday in the NFL.
I know.
That's the thing that worries me with.
But
it felt like every time he would get the snap, he was thinking about that rush. He was all right. Where's it coming from? I don't.
Well, the right tackle was breaking down in that Michigan game. I don't know how he.
That whole front was banged up.
It was just hard for him to do. And I'm not making excuses for the kid, but man, it very much like you're watching, with our kid from Ohio State that's now down with the Texans, Stroud, and watching him play with those pro wide receivers. At Ohio State and play that Georgia game. Mm-hmm. You're watching Penix play with pro receivers, and you're thinking, man, this is what he can do with those type of receivers. That was encouraging to me. Yeah. That really was encouraging me. And I understand what you're saying about where you have them. These quarterbacks are so hard to evaluate. It really is hard to evaluate.
We've both been wrong on a lot of quarterbacks.
No, absolutely.
It's the nature of the position. And some of the smartest people I know in the NFL.
The Packers aren't wrong about quarterbacks.
They seem to nail it.
As soon as you walk into that building, it's just
that did not rub off at me at all when I was working there. So I know what the problem is there. But yeah, I do. I mean, like I say, I don't think Penix is a first-round quarterback. I don't. But man, the guy is a winner, and he's everywhere he's been. And
deep ball,
the deep ball.
You can make the argument he's the best deep ball thrower in the draft.
Really, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, with the way he chucks, he's so aggressive. He knew he had pro receivers that he was throwing to.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, to me, I'm watching these guys when they play these quarterbacks, and I'm thinking, well, this could translate because he's already playing with pro receivers.
Yeah.
I mean, he's putting the ball. It's not like these guys are having to work a ton. But it was
Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan.
I love Polk.
He's a good player.
The one thing that I'm looking at, though, is if you look at the way that quarterbacks have been overvalued in recent drafts, and you look at Kenny Pickett, late first round, 23rd overall, when he was taken by Pittsburgh. You look at Will Levis, he didn't go in the first, but he was very early in the second. If you're comparing Michael Penix to those two guys, which are recent prospects, I think he's better than both of those guys.
Interesting.
And I will have him most likely, and final grades, of course, aren't here yet, but whenever I've got him graded out, I will most likely have him higher than both of those guys. And so if that's the case, then you might see a team take a flyer on him late in the first round.
The biggest myth in the draft process is there's a consensus quarterback board somewhere that everybody's working off.
The same way.
Every single board, especially at quarterbacks, looks so different team to team with what they value, what they're looking for. Like in this perfect example, you and I. To me, there's a huge gap between Will Levis and Michael Penix, in my opinion. I liked Will Levis more than I liked Michael Penix. That's my opinion. And I think the two playoff games with Penix was a good example. I thought how he played against a very vanilla Texas defense showed what he can do. And that's an NFL quarterback right there. Against Michigan, which is closer to what NFL defenses are going to throw at him week in, week out, he missed open reads. The accuracy wasn't on point. I think a lot of people watch the Oregon games and then the playoff games with Penix, but watch him against Arizona State and Utah and some of these other defenses that really gave him trouble. And I don't know. I struggle with Penix quite a bit, and that doesn't even factor in the medicals. Older guy, So
that's the one that's going to knock him is his age and the medicals. Those are two.
But
huge
I think
because he could go to Indy, and completely be knocked.
But I feel like that people with the age, it doesn't bother them for this reason. I think people are liking the fact that these quarterbacks are making more starts. That we've gone away from
Bill Parcells.
Yeah, we've gone away from the Mitch Trubisky only started 10 games, and now he's the third overall pick, and then you look at Brock Purdy, who started a million games, but he's Mr. Irrelevant, and now people are looking at experience and starts as a positive. And not as a negative. I felt like, he's an older guy and all. You always used to hear that. But then now these guys are, the guys are getting thrown into the game so much earlier in their career.
Any guess how many starts Bo Nix had in his college career?
Oh, my gosh.
50-something, I'm sure. Was it 53?
I go 51.
61? There you go.
That's crazy.
It seemed like he played LSU a lot again. I appreciate that.
He was 43 and 18 over those. So even though at Auburn, 3 years at Auburn weren't perfect.
No, they weren't.
He still won some games.
He won games. You're absolutely right about that. But let me ask you this real quick. The thing is Caleb Williams, the scrutiny on the quarterback.
Yeah.
What are people going to scrutinize the most about him? If you had to, because I love Jalen Daniels as well, my Jaden Daniels, my LSU guy.
Oh, yeah.
I love him, but people are going to scrutinize how thin he looks.
Yeah, he's thin.
Especially with what's happened to the poor kid at Carolina. And how
at least he's 6'3". Jason.
Yeah, but I'm saying,
to him.
but 205, he takes some wicked hits.
He does.
And
He's
he
tough,
gets
man.
up. He's tough and all that. But what's going to be the scrutiny for a Caleb Williams? Why are people going to poke holes in him? Because I watch his tape and I'm like thinking, this guy looks for a real deal for me.
Yeah, and I think he'll probably end up as my number one player in the draft. He is the clear favorite to go number one. When you look at the Notre Dame game, certainly that was not a great game for him.
Yeah.
On the road against a very good defense. If we're going to ding Michael Penix for how he played against Michigan,
right.
ding Caleb Williams for the way he played against Notre Dame. The off-field stuff, I don't think it's as much of a factor as a lot of people want to make it. Doing GQ articles and painting his nails and just being a little bit different is not like the worst thing in the world. Certainly not as bad as some people make it out to be. The crying in the stands with his mom, it shows me the guy cares.
Yeah.
I'm confused by the criticism of that one. At the end of the day, is he going to win you football games? That's what it's going to come down to. And I think the goal of picking a quarterback in the top 10 should not be to find the next Patrick Mahomes, Andrew Luck. It's not realistic. You put too much pressure on these guys to be that guy. The expectation or the goal of drafting a quarterback in the top 10 is can he be an NFL quarterback that ranks top 10 in the league?
Yeah.
Because that's a guy that's going to help me win a division, go to the playoffs.
Yeah.
That's all you need. If you have a guy that's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, you've got a chance.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get into the dance, and then once you do, it's game by game by game.
Right.
And anybody can win those games. So I think Caleb Williams, I think Drake May, and I would throw Jaden Daniels in there as guys that you can at least understand how a team will look at them and say, yeah, there's a trajectory of him becoming a top 10 quarterback in the league.
Is there a chance that Daniels is the second quarterback taken?
He could go one. Look, what we just say about these, there's no consensus. You know, all it takes is one team to. I do think the odds are low that he would go one, a little bit higher that he'd go two, but I think the odds would be he's going to be the third quarterback drafted. But we have a brand new regime in Washington. You know, who knows how they haven't hired a head coach yet. It's who knows how they're going to view that quarterback position. Maybe they are going for, because Drake May is a really talented guy. But down the stretch, you watch the Clemson tape, you watch the NC State tape. Worries you a little bit. Some of the decision making. Now, part of it is, and you could say the same thing with Caleb. He felt like he had to put the superhero cape on and do it all himself because he just wasn't getting a ton of help. But still, they're young players working through their mistakes. Jaden Daniels is a 5-year starter. He's, to your point you were saying earlier about that age factor. Having the experience, what he did at Arizona State, then he moves to LSU, having the same offensive ecosystem 2 years in a row. First time he's ever had that 2 years in a row, played a big factor in him blowing up like this. So I'm a big believer in.
They won 10 games because of him.
Oh, no.
He was the reason why they.
Historically bad defense.
They were historically bad defense. They won 10 games because of him. And if you ding him for anything else, just remember that he was the one reason why they won 10 games.
I'm a big believer in when you scout players, bank on explosive plays.
Yeah.
I think those translate.
Yeah.
With Jaden Daniels, he accounted for 90 plays of 20-plus yards this year. To put that number in perspective, Joe Burrow, his Heisman winning season, national title winning season a couple years ago, he had 87. And he did that in 15 games. Jaden Daniels had 90 in 12 games.
With Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson.
Yeah. And to that point, Malik Neighbors is...
Neighbors and Thomas are pretty good.
Malik Neighbors, he's a top 5 pick.
Neighbors, yeah.
Brian Thomas, I think, if he ends up being a top 12 pick, wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
He is that type of talent.
Neighbors is rare.
Yeah. So I do think he had plenty of help, but the name that comes up when you talk about Jayden Daniels with teams is Lamar Jackson.
Okay.
And it's not a apples-to-apples comparison necessarily, but defenses have to game plan for Jayden Daniels the same way they have to game plan for Lamar Jackson.
The escape.
Because he is legit with his legs.
Yeah.
He can beat you from the pocket.
Sure can.
Still some processing things that I think he's still developing at, but the advancement he made this year as a passer was really impressive. So, and there's no doubt, again, the offensive line played really well this year.
Yeah.
He had the two first-round receivers, and then even the guys that went back, those guys are going to get drafted next year for LSU receivers. So he had a lot of talent around him, but a credit to Jayden Daniels for really taking advantage of that.
I think you got him dead on right. Yep.
Couple really interesting quarterback conversations already. Then we're not even to the All-Star games. And there's going to be a lot of eyes on the guys that are in the Senior Bowl, that are in the Shrine Bowl, and then you get into the Combine and guys that will throw in Indianapolis. That'll go a long way as well. Kind of shifting to the defensive side before we take our second break. Nick, whenever you look at this Senior Bowl roster, are there any defensive players that we should keep our eye on whenever you go in?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see a few of them next week in Mobile. I want to start with Kenyon Mitchell. I believe that's how you say his name, out of Toledo, the corner. Really excited to see what he puts on the field next week. I mean, he's a guy that you see in the late first round, you see early second round. He's a guy I'm really excited to see. Ennis Rakestraw, we talked about him a little bit last week, another Senior Bowl guy. But Cameron Kinchens, I think that's the number one guy I'm going to be looking forward to seeing in Mobile next week. I mean, he's a hard hitter. He's aggressive. If you're looking out of Miami. If you're looking for a guy that kind of fits the Cowboys mold of safeties of the past, as far as hard hitters, really aggressive, might give up the big play here and there, but he's going to be able to make some plays in the front end and be able to kind of lay his hat down on some few occasions. Cameron Kitchens is that guy. We talked about
just
Peyton
dug
Wilson.
him a grave by saying he gives up big plays.
Yeah.
At least for Cowboys fans.
Watch the North Carolina tape. I think that is a good example of the good and the bad with him. Because he will give up some plays, but he will make some plays as well. And he's a good example of juniors now being eligible for these all-star games, and he's a guy taking advantage of that. A lot of juniors are saying, I put enough on tape, I'm coming out, but I don't need an all-star game. Kitchens got the Senior Bowl invite, and most grades on Kitchens are right around that third round from scouts. He wants to get into the second. He wants to be a top 50 guy. And going to the Senior Bowl is a great opportunity for him to do that. A big question will be, how fast does he run? Does he really have the top-tier athleticism to cover both sidelines if he's going to be playing a center field type of safety role? Is he, can he play a post safety? What kind of safety is he? What kind of athlete is he? So this week at the Senior Bowl next week at the Senior Bowl in Mobile will be a big opportunity for him.
What about the Wake Forest kid? Is it Mustapia? Is that his
safety?
Malik Mustapia. I had a scout tell me about him, and the words he's a safety from Wake Forest, and the guy said he's an active, tough, physical, fun to watch player. So I mean, I said, give me a name of a guy, and is there, Dane, any thought about that at all, or am I?
No. I think right now he's in the middle rounds. I think, but a guy that's trying to get into that top 100 and say, hey,
I asked for some under the radar kind of guys.
And he's not
he gave me him and
stocky.
Jalen Simpson from Auburn. Were the two.
He's kind of like that safety linebacker hybrid type. Jalen Simpson, I
Yeah.
think he could really start to jump up whenever you look at what he can do from a flex positional standpoint.
And that's a good riser because he was PFA coming into the year and then started picking off passes this year for Auburn and put himself into that draft radar.
Yeah, the ball skills guy. That's what they were saying about this kid. So.
Did you want to add something on Kitchens at the end there?
Speaking of safeties and guys that I think probably won't test well at Combine, it'll be kind of interesting to kind of see how their process goes. Javon Bullard, I think that's another one out of Georgia.
Love that.
That's your guy, right?
That's my guy.
Yeah, I just don't think he's going to test well.
I'm a big Bullard guy.
I don't think he's going to test well. That's the one thing that I think will be a little bit concerning coming out of Combine.
You don't care about that,
I'm
do you?
with you, Zach.
No.
I'm with you, Zach. I think he's a good player.
We had the same talk with Winfield Jr. when it came out. I don't care.
Hey, I'm still Winfield Jr. I got you.
That's a great shout out because that's the question. Is he going to run and test well enough to go in the top 50 picks? But man, he will hit you. He's so aggressive with the way he plays, the angles that he takes, and he's smart. I mean, you can tell that he is really anticipating what the offense is doing based off of formation, based off of tendencies, and puts himself in a position to make plays. So yeah, Bullard is this safety class overall we probably don't have a first round safety, I don't think, but how does it Tyler Nubin from Minnesota, and
Nubin is, I think, pretty damn
Nubin's
good.
really good.
Oh, he is. He is, no doubt. Big fan of Nubin. One of my favorite safeties this year is Jaden Hicks, Washington State. That guy.
There you
is
go.
Fun.
Now we're talking.
Oh, he's
6'3", 210.
He will
now,
hit you.
Tell me about him. Let's go.
But
yeah,
he had one of Michael Penix. Didn't throw a ton of interceptions
No,
this year. This guy had one of them.
Yeah.
Watch the Wisconsin tape and watch him just lay out dudes over the middle. Watch him cover. He is a lot of fun. He'll be at the Senior Bowl as well.
If you want a smart football player, Tyler Nubin is that guy for me. I mean, you see him lining
Minnesota,
up. Obviously,
right?
Yeah, you
Minnesota.
can see him lining up in single high instances.
Yep.
You see him even coming up and lining up on the line in like third down and short situations.
Yeah.
I said it I think last week. I think he's the best run defending safety in this class. He's incredible.
How are we feeling about Peyton Wilson, NC State? I
Linebacker.
watched him, man, and that dude. You talk about intelligence, instincts. All around the football.
Medical stuff.
I mean, medical?
You missed it. We had a whole Peyton Wilson
Blink the
debacle
damn
on the
medical.
last show.
Yeah, like this guy's all over the damn field.
Yeah,
he was
400 tackles. Like,
him or Eichenberg from Ohio State. Which one?
It comes down to the medicals. It does because he. You mean surgeries this
What
guy has
are
had?
you
He's
doing
had-
to me
he's had-
now? You used to be so good at this.
I think
What
Wilson
happened?
runs
Literally.
a little better than Eichenberg, I think.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I think so too. Wilson literally has double-digit surgeries.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Double
right?
digit.
Double
So-
digit.
Well, that's what happens when you have 400 tackles.
Yeah, he's a 6
You're going to get banged up a little bit.
And the question is, okay, is he a guy that is going to be fine throughout his rookie contract? Is he, like that's he's going to be a tough one for the doctors to really figure out. But you guys, I mean, you're all over him. He's a really fun player to watch.
Before we go to break, then 6-foot trotter. Come on, man.
Out of Clemson.
I'd say I see him in first-round mocks, and I'm like, ooh, I don't see it.
Give me Cedric.
You think he's like a second, third round
Cedric
guy?
Gray, North Carolina, is a
second round's
taller
too
trotter.
rich, I think.
Third round guy? Is it because of his height?
I don't think he's the type of athlete. I mean, in 1997, he's a first-round pick.
Yeah.
That's. But in today's NFL,
That Roquan Smith's making a lot of plays with the Ravens. Let me just say that right.
He could run and he could make plays at the sideline. A Trotter, I just don't know if he's that type of athlete, and I don't trust him in space necessarily.
He just called your guy slow.
He did call my guy slow.
I called him not blazing fast.
I loved. I drafted his dad.
Yeah. Trust me. I know that story very well.
He's got some toughness like his dad.
Did you watch
looks
Cedric
like
Gray
his
yet?
dad,
Yeah.
Cedric Gray, North Carolina. Have you checked him out
No,
yet?
I need. That's.
I think he's a taller,
I checked him
faster
out for you.
trotter,
I
man.
like him. I
Cedric
really
Gray
do.
is that dude.
Senior Bowl guy as well,
Yeah.
so that'll be fun next week.
Well, and the top Shrine guy this year might be the top linebacker drafted, Edrin Cooper from A&M.
Yeah.
So
Let's talk about him. Let's go into our Shrine Bowl preview, and we'll talk about him when we come back. Enjoy excellent dining, boutique shopping, and exciting events in the Star District in Frisco, featuring dozens of North Texas's best restaurants and shops, plus a calendar full of family-friendly events. There's always something to do. Shop, dine, and do inside the Star District. Visit thestardistrict.com for more info. More of the Draft Show coming up in a matter of moments.
Hi, Drew Pearson, former Dallas Cowboy and now Pro Football Hall of Famer here. If you're struggling with your vision and tired of those contacts and glasses, don't throw a Hail Mary. Go where I went. Laser Care Eye Center, the official LASIK partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
Drew, thank you so much for trusting us with your vision correction procedure. At Laser Care Eye Center, we offer 6 different vision correction procedures to help patients see.
Check them out at dfweyes.com. Tell them Drew sent you. Hood hood.
In a stressful world, Lincoln provides balance and calm amidst the chaos by creating sanctuaries that move you through the world with ease. Our vehicles make your time richer and more uplifting with human-centric design, intelligent technology, and powerful performance. As the official luxury vehicle of the Dallas Cowboys, driving a Lincoln is just another way to show your team pride. Experience our full lineup of luxury vehicles, including the Corsair, Aviator, Navigator, and Nautilus at Lincoln.com.
I'm Dak Prescott, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys.
And they snap it to Prescott, who looks right. It's not there. He escapes left. He'll run for a first down.
Just like football, when it comes to crypto, it's important to have a team you can trust. With blockchain.com, I know I'm in good hands. Since 2011, they've been trusted by millions around the world to buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrency.
Prescott's going to run this himself. Run it up the middle, and he scores.
Whether you're new to crypto or an active trader, they've got you covered. What are you waiting for? Get started at blockchain.com.
Hi, I'm Dane McCray, Dallas Cowboys alumni player here with Smoothie King. And Smoothie King wants to ask you, what's that sound? That's the sound of us magically transforming our smoothie bowls into 2 new decadent flavors. Dig into a cool acai or pitaya bowl, handcrafted with crunchy, purely Elizabeth granola, fresh strawberries, and finished with a velvety chocolate hazelnut drizzle. Perfect for breakfast, lunch, or anytime you want to munch. And that's the sound of you making them disappear. Smoothie Bowls, now in 2 new decadent flavors. Only at Smoothie King, the official smoothie of the Dallas Cowboys.
This is the DallasCowboys.com Draft Show.
Draft Show presented by Miller Lite. Taste you can depend on. The 99th annual East-West Shrine Bowl will feature 130 of the nation's top NFL prospects on Thursday, February 1st at the Star in Frisco. Tickets as low as $20 are available now at shrinebowl.com. Proceeds benefit Shriners Children's. Welcome back in. Dane Brugler, Nick Harris, Brian Broaddus, and we've got Zach Wolchuk. I'm Kyle Yeomans. All right. Shrine Bowl preview. We just talked about it. 130 of the nation's top NFL draft prospects coming to Frisco. Practices get underway on Saturday.
Yep.
4 practices, right? Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, right?
Right. Yeah.
4 straight days of practices, and we'll be right across the hall, so we'll have an opportunity
When's the
to see
weigh-in?
that.
Do we know?
It's not public anymore. It's so they don't really tell us.
They don't tell.
I'm sure because most everyone's coming in, and I think they're doing them separately anyways, position by position instead of everybody at once.
Yeah.
So I think those are probably Saturday then.
Okay. So we'll actually know how big these guys are.
Yeah, right. Official measurements.
Yeah.
I know Fridays when interviews start, so I'm excited to sit down with a lot of these guys, ask some questions. That's such an invaluable part of my process, just getting one-on-one time with these guys. So that starts tomorrow, Friday.
And Senior Bowl doesn't do public weigh-ins either since COVID, right?
Right. That's they've done away with it.
Why is that? I'm just curious if you know.
I think some people believe it's kind of an antiquated way of doing things. Making these guys try to cross a stage in their
shorts,
underwear, and stand on a scale and
In front of hundreds of media members.
Yeah,
writing down notes and
there's-
scouts.
If you're an evaluator, there's value in understanding a player's body type and just muscle definition. Is there room to add muscle? Things like that, but. At the same time, we don't need to make it as much of a spectacle as we've done in the past.
Okay, that's interesting. Now, with this group of Shrine Bowl participants and the juniors being able to play in these All-Star games, do you feel like there's an uptick in the roster this year compared to years past in the way that this bowl game has been represented?
Yeah, I think that the juniors certainly helped that. One of the keeping with the Miami theme, the Miami defense theme, one of the juniors that I can't wait to see is Leonard Taylor, defensive tackle, former 5-star guy, right? I mean, he was big time coming out of high school. And
where'd he go to high school?
The
Nick?
first step
Miami
quickness.
Palmetto.
There you go.
My gosh, he is explosive off the snap.
The flashes are first round, but the body of work not there. And so it's like I will bet he is the most interviewed player this week at the Shrine Bowl.
Trying to figure out why?
Trying to figure out what makes him tick.
Yeah.
How much does he love football? Is this something that he's, because he has potential.
Yeah.
Does he have that, intensity, that fire within him that he's going to reach that potential?
I mentioned it a bit in the last show about Leonard Taylor. He was a guy that, for me, I wanted to stay away from because I've seen these types before. The 5-star, the guy who was from the very moment he stepped on a high school field, had everything he ever needed.
Yeah.
Stayed home, went to Miami, and this feels like a trend with Miami guys too, where they get to Miami and they're this big-time prospect, and then they just kind of don't have that same passion, that same fire, and whenever they get to the NFL, they fizzle out really fast.
Right.
So that's why I'm like, I would much rather go in a different direction at defensive tackle with this defensive tackle class. If it was a different class, okay, yeah, I'm investing a little bit more time in Leonard Taylor. I agree. He has that explosive get off. He has those moments, but the production, I mean, there's just not a lot of it there.
He lacks finish. And he does, when Brian watches him, he'll be like, he's on the ground a lot.
Yeah.
He is. He's
God,
a guy
I
that's
hate
on the
that.
ground a lot.
Get up.
When you're on the ground, I hate that.
Yeah.
Well, and he's a guy.
That if you're a clapper as a defensive back.
Because I agree with 100% of what you guys are saying, but at a certain point, it's like, okay, where are we drafting him? Because if he's still around in the late 4th round, is that a point where we're like, okay, we'll take a swing on this guy? And, if we miss...
It's a traits thing.
Right. And so at what point do we feel comfortable drafting him? That's part of this fact-finding mission of these All-Star games when you interview him. And I'm glad he's going to be here to, kind of answer some of those questions.
Where would you feel comfortable sliding him in if you had to put a grade on him early?
If I did a 3-round mock draft, he wouldn't be in there.
Okay.
I think somewhere early day 3 is where you start to have those conversations about, okay, at some point this potential is worth us, throwing a day 3 pick at.
So we're going to open our day 3 broadcast, and we're going to talk about the names, and he's going to be one of those names, isn't he? We're going to remember
but
that.
you know what? All it takes is one team. We've seen traits guys go
we have.
than we thought. And so if he sneaks into the day 2, I don't think it'd be completely shocking based off of, again, those flashes that he has. But this is where the process starts for him to prove himself and to convince teams, hey, I'm worth that gamble.
What do you know about this cornerback from the CFL, Stiggers?
Yeah.
This is a story I wanted to bring up. This is a very interesting one. So this kid Quantez Stiggers, he
no college, right?
So he played at. I'll start with the high school days. So he started at this prep academy in Atlanta, the best academy. It's basically like a private type ordeal, the best I could find. Couldn't even really find much about this school. Played there, ended up on a HBCU scholarship to Lane College in Tennessee, D2 program. Was only there, I believe, half a semester. His father passed away, was in a car accident. So he had to go back home and help support his family. Worked 2 jobs, Instacart, was working DoorDash, things like that to support for his family. He's got a brother who's a quadriplegic because of a football injury. He broke his spine. Wow. He's got 3 other siblings and a single mom now who had lost her husband. So he was supporting for the family, and the mom one day signed him up for a tryout for the fan-controlled football league in Atlanta. And it's the 7-on-7 fan-controlled football. You've probably seen it in some areas. He goes there and he balls out. Catches the attention of the offensive coordinator for the Toronto Argonauts in the CFL. They say, hey, come up to Toronto. Let's try you out in this open tryout ordeal. See if you can maybe get a camp invite. He gets a camp invite. He goes to camp, and the staffers at Toronto said by day 2 he was separating himself from the rookies that were there. Wow. Ended up starting as a corner on the Toronto Argonauts in the CFL, so made the team. Goes up there and then wins the CFL Rookie of the Year. 5 interceptions, 56 tackles this past season. Really fun story. He's going to be at the Shrine Bowl this week. The NFL sent out a memo a couple of weeks ago about him saying that he's eligible to be drafted. About half of the GMs have already reached out to his representation about him, and he'll have a pro day in Atlanta around the same time as Georgia and Georgia Tech. That's going to be really big for him because there's just so many unknowns because he didn't play college football. But he wins the Rookie of the Year in the CFL, and he's able to pick up all these different type of concepts so fast. Denver is probably the program I'm looking at for him. I say program. Franchise that I'm looking at for him. There's a lot of Broncos connections with the Argonauts. And the GM has already kind of reached out there. So Denver's probably the one you want to look at if he goes undrafted. But I think this is a guy that could get drafted. I think 6th, 7th round. This is a guy you look at. And if he has a big week this week at Shrine Bowl, that could even rise.
I watched him play Hamilton Tiger Cats.
Yeah?
The Hamilton Tiger Cats. My man had an interception in the game. One-handed interception this game. He could play left or right corner. He's got ball skills. I mentioned the interception. He plays a lot of zone in the CFL. So you see him play kind of sideways. But he's a stocky guy, and he's not afraid to tackle. I mean, there were a couple of times where the receiver caught the ball in front of him and he's driving on the ball. He does have quickness, and when they break inside on him, he can chase and trail. I had 2 scouts tell me, because I was saying, give me some, they said, watch this kid from the CFL. So NFL teams are already, their pro department's probably seen this kid play. But he's compact. He did lose his man in this game, though. They gave up a touchdown late in the game. He kind of lost it in that end zone area. It's a huge end zone they play in, by the way.
20 yards.
Yeah, but they lost the guy. But other than that, everything about the movement, the way he adjusts, the way he stays with his guy, the way he drives, tackles. There was a lot of things that you're just kind of going, oh, okay, I could see why people are talking about this kid. But again, I had 2 NFL guys say, hey, you need to check this CFL kid out. And I'm like, that's why I asked. And I'm glad you knew the story.
The corners coach for the Broncos, they asked him. He played in the NFL for quite a bit. Or corners coach for the Argonauts, he played for the Broncos quite a bit. And he said this is a 3rd, 4th round guy for him. But he's like, obviously there's going to be a lot of questions, and he's going to have to fulfill a lot of things in the draft process. So it's probably a day 3 type ordeal. But his Argonauts corners coach was giving him a cosign.
I'll be interested to see how he plays in the one-on-ones and stuff, because again, you watch the CFL stuff. He's literally playing sideways. They're playing a lot of zone, and they're funneling everything into the middle of the field if they can.
And he's picking up those concepts.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fascinating.
And you're right. You could go back and watch the YouTube grainy of him playing 7-on-7 football with that lead.
Flag control
that left flag. Yeah, it's crazy.
Football.
But yeah, I'm like, wait a minute. This guy played at Toronto. I can get some Toronto tape. Let's go. Yeah, that kind of thing.
No,
so.
It's a rare situation to see a guy that's already played pro football be in an all-star game like this. But because he didn't play college, he is eligible for the draft. And Eric Galco, who the director of the Shrine Bowl, called me a few weeks ago and said, hey, get this guy on your radar because I didn't know about him.
Yeah.
I don't scout the CFL. That's not usually something I've had to worry about when it comes to the draft. But this guy is eligible, and he's a player, so he's got a shot.
That's awesome. I've never been so close to dropping an S-bomb on here, like than saying "holy blank" because of that story. I mean, that's an incredible story.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, it's only fitting that Dane Brugler's here, and we're talking about day 3 corners here this before All-Star games even get going. But that's outstanding. Is he going to wear a Saskatchewan? Or not a Saskatchewan, a Toronto helmet for the Shrine Bowl?
Yeah.
Is that
He's
what
listed on the roster as Toronto Argonauts.
That's so cool.
That's badass.
That is awesome.
Wears as a weird number 42 is what he wore during the season.
The Fighting Barry Churches.
Yep.
Anthony Henry.
There you go. All right, we could do this for a whole hour, another hour. We could do it all day long.
I honestly could do it all day.
Yeah, you guys want to just keep going? Let's go. Keep rolling.
We got a radio gig. We got to go do.
Y'all got to get on the road. Dane, it's been so fun catching up with you.
Thank you so much. This is my pleasure. It feels like I never left, right?
Yeah.
And so anytime
We miss you, man. We
Technically,
really do.
you haven't. You've been on every year.
Anytime
10
I can
years
make
in
it
a row.
happen, I take advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah, make
so
sure you show up
appreciate
at the
you guys.
combine for these guys when they, if we have the combine stuff.
I'll be there for over a week. So
there we go.
That'll be fun. But we've got Shrine Bowl, Senior Bowl, and then of course getting into the combine stuff coming up. So we'll be in touch. Yeah. We'll definitely hit you up on the phone line if we need to down the line. But Dane, if you haven't already, subscribe to Dane on The Athletic.
Absolutely.
Go and follow, subscribe. It is worth your time, and the Beast isn't even here yet, and it's still worth your time to see all the mock drafts and the articles coming out. You can keep up with the draft blog on DallasCowboys.com. Nick Harris and I started that this week, so if you want some running draft content for the Dallas Cowboys, that's a new thing you can check out, too, if you're a fan of the draft show. But that'll do it for us here this week. We'll come back on Tuesday. We'll have some Shrine Bowl practices to talk about. Nick Harris will be out in Mobile. We'll get him on the phone lines. We'll get you caught up on draft process here in 2024. For Dane Brugler, Nick Harris, Brian Broaddus, Zach Wolchuk, Chris Beam in the back, I'm Kyle Yeoman saying so long. We'll see you next week on the Draft Show.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!